Before we get into today's game, I want to talk about the sponsors for my channel. Card Conduit is the best way to sell your unused magic cards. Whether you've got a box of unsorted bulk, or a complete and alphabetized set, there's a great option for everyone. With a payout averaging 19% better than using any one buy list, and that's after fees are applied, you can rest assured you'll get the best bang for your buck. If you're a skeptic like me, their easy customer service and detailed reports make the whole interaction transparent and safe. And if you use the affiliate link in the description below, or the promo code MTGMUDSTA, you'll save 10% off their fees. And 401 Games, Canada's one-stop shop for trading cards, board games, and hobby supplies. Not to mention an easy-to-use and great online buy list. And if you use the promo code MTGMUDSTA, your first purchase of MTG Sealed and Singles will be 5% off. And Dragon Shield, the strongest sleeves for your strongest deck. So be sure to use the code MUDSTA or the affiliate link down below to save 5% on your next order. Let's start today's video off with a huge shout out to Sparky. Many thanks Sparky for continuing to support me through Patreon. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game has Kuzno, Desmond, and Eric joining me, with Kuzno once more playing his Finneas deck. He's keeping Chef at Dunes, Forest, Ghost Quarter, Explosive Vegetation, Doubling Season, Hour of Promise, and a Warren War Leader. Desmond is playing the Flip Tamiyo, keeping Farseek, Omniscience, Island, Sapphire Medallion, Talisman of Curiosity, An Offer You Can't Refuse, and Ren and 7. Eric is playing Zoraline, keeping Swamp, Glasswing Grace, Life Creed Duo, Dawn's Truce, Night's Whisper, Heliod Suncrowned, and a Star Charter. I am playing my Bello deck, keeping Trail Tracker Scout, Forest, Gruul's Signet, Dictate of the Twin Gods, Forgotten Cave, Blasphemous Act, and a Swiftfoot Boots. Kuzno wins the die roll and starts us off. He draws and plays the first land with the Chef at Dunes. Desmond's got an island for turn, and does what everyone wishes they can do by casting their commander on turn 1 with Tamiyo. I just draw and play a forest. Eric draws for turn, plays a swamp, and does the second best thing you can do on turn 1 with a Soul Ring. Kuzno's got a forest, and is able to cast Finneas, and then passes to Desmond. Desmond draws and goes straight to combat, swinging Tamiyo at me for 0. He gets a clue token as he attacks, but he doesn't have a second land to play, and has to discard down to 7. I play a Mossfire Valley, and pay 2 for a Gruul's Signet, and pass. Eric draws and casts Night's Whisper, losing 2 and drawing 2. He then plays an Age-Graced Chapel, and passes. Kuzno's got a Ghost Quarter for turn, and he casts Druid of the Spade. Going to combat, he swings Finneas at Eric for 2 commander damage, who takes the hit. This has Kuzno putting a counter onto his Druid of the Spade, and he passes turn. Desmond draws, and once more goes to combat, swinging Tamiyo at me again. I take no damage, and Desmond makes another clue token, but still can't find a second land. He discards down to 7, and passes. My turn has me casting Trail Tracker Scout in my main phase, and then playing a Terramorphic Expanse. I still have a mana floating from tapping the Mossfire Valley and the Gruul's Signet, and I use the red to cycle Forgotten Cave. I sacrifice it, going to find a basic, and I pass to Eric. Eric draws, and plays a Life Creed Duo. He then casts a Valley Rockcaller. He's also missing a land drop, which is apparently the theme of this game, and he passes to Kuzno. Kuz draws and plays a Seasoned Warren Guard. Going to combat, he swings Finneas at Desmond, and the Druid of the Spade at Eric. Neither of them block, with Kuzno getting to put a +1/+1 counter onto each of his rabbits as they take their hits. With nothing else, he passes. Desmond draws and finally finds a land, playing a command tower on turn 4. He then swings Tamiyo again at me, making a clue token, and then happily casts a Farseek, going to find a land, and passing. I've got a Copperline Gorge which comes in tapped, and I'm then able to cast a Gilded Lotus. I still have enough mana at this point to cast Essica's Chariot, making some cat tokens, and passing. Eric plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Bat in his main phase, and he then casts an uncounterable Zoraline. He follows up with a Runelurker Bat, and he goes to combat. He swings the Valley Rockcaller at Desmond, and the Life Creed Duo goes at me. Eric gains 1 off the Duo, and then drains us for 3 off the Rockcaller. Desmond and I declare no blocks, and we take our hits, and Eric passes. Kuzno's got a Flooded Strand for turn, and once more goes straight to combat. He swings Finneas at Desmond, and the Druid of Spade at Eric, with Finneas putting a counter on all of his rabbits and draws him a card since he's reached 10 power. Desmond and Eric then take their hits, and after combat, Kuzno cracks the Flooded Strand, going to find Savannah. He then continues to ramp with Explosive Vegetation, going to find some basics as he passes. Desmond draws and plays a Soul Ring, and then taps it for Talisman of Curiosity. He follows it up with a Mana Dork with Fanatic of Ronus, and he then goes to combat. He swings Tamiyo once more at me for the Clue token, and he passes after that. I've got a Forest return, and out comes Bello. I follow it up with Swiftfoot Boots, but Desmond counters them with an Offer You Can't Refuse, and I get 2 treasure tokens instead. Going to combat, I swing my now animated Chariot and Gilded Lotus at Kuzno. I essentially get a Populate trigger as I attack, copying a cat token with the Chariot, and Kuzno declares no blocks and takes 8. I draw 2 from Bello's ability granted to the enchantment and artifacts, and I then pass turn. Eric draws and plays Heliod's Suncrowned, and then goes to combat. He swings the Valley Rockcaller at Desmond, Zoraline at Kuzno, and the 2 other bats go at me. Eric gains 3 from his attacking bats, and then drains us for 3 from the Valley Rockcaller. He also gets to put 4 +1/+1 counters onto Zoraline because of all the different life gain triggers, thanks to Heliod. None of us block, and Eric then gains life from Lifelink, and gets to put another +1/+1 counter onto Zoraline from Heliod, and passes. Kuzno draws and goes to combat. He swings his Buff Bunny Finneas at Eric, and gets counters onto his rabbit tokens, and draws a card because he has more than 10 power. Eric blocks Zoraline though. Before damage, Kuzno responds by casting Beast Within to try and take out Zoraline. It resolves, and Finneas lives, but Eric takes no damage and gains a 3/3 Beast token. Eric then also gains some life from the Life Creed duo though, and he gets to put a +1/+1 counter onto the Rock Collar because of Heliod seeing the life gain. In his post-combat main phase, Kuzno then plays a Paw Patch Recruit and pays for the Offspring cost. He makes a 1/1 token copy of it, and after that, plays a tapped Desert of the True. Desmond draws and plays a Sapphire Medallion. He then goes to combat. He swings Tamiyo at Eric this time, making a Clue token and a Statement. And then in his second main phase, sacrifices 2 clues, drawing 2 cards, and flipping Tamiyo to her Planeswalker side. Desmond then upticks Tamiyo to dissuade any attacks, and passes turn. I draw and play Kadama of the East Tree. Once they're out, I cast Dictate of the Twin Gods. This triggers Kadama, which allows me to put Gruul War Chant out, and I then get to move to combat. I swing out at Eric, and make a treasure token from the Populate from the Chariot, and after doing the math, we realize Eric takes exactly lethal. After that, I cast a Blasphemous Act, and get a Trail Tracker Scout, which allows me to return the Swiftfoot Boots. Kuzno responds by casting Court of Calling for 2, but can't find anything that'll save his board, and just fails to find. The board then gets wiped, and after that, I pass. Kuzno draws and plays Hour of Promise, going to find a Desert of the Indomitable and an Oak Hollow Village. He's got 3 deserts at this point, which gets him 2 tap zombie tokens, and he then passes turn. Desmond draws and plays what we think is an island, which is kind of hard to tell with those oil slick lands. He then casts a Railway Brawler, and then follows up by cracking a Clue. He draws a card, and then decides to uptick Tamiyo, and passes to me. I draw and play Rootbound Crag, and then recast Bello. I follow him up with an Unnatural Growth, and then go to combat. Kuzno responds by casting Parting Gust on Bello, gifting me a fish, and unfortunately, my artifacts and enchantments become unanimated. Without any attacks, I'm just forced to pass. Kuzno draws and casts a really sad Shamanic Revelation, drawing 2. He then recasts Finneas and passes. Desmond draws and plays a Forest. He then downticks Tamiyo to get back Farseek, and adds a mana. With that 1 extra mana, he's able to play Omniscience. And then from his hand, cast Containment Grafter, and then a Fauna Shaman for free. They also both enter with some additional +1/+1 counters because of the Railway Brawler. Desmond then continues by casting Contagion Engine, and he kills my fish token by giving it a -1/-1 counter, or at least all of my creatures anyway. And he then plays Farseek, going to go find an island. Going to combat, he swings at me with a Railway Brawler, and I take 10 because of the Dictate being out. With nothing else, he passes. I draw, and play a Reliquary Tower, and then recast Bello. I then move to combat, and thankfully no responses are had, so I swing my Dictate and Gruul War Chant at Kuzno, and everything else goes to Desmond. I get to populate a treasure token basically, thanks to the Chariot, and without enough blockers, Desmond and Kuzno both take lethal, and I win the game. Game review time. Today's game was about 40-ish minutes long. I think it was about 41 minutes all said and done. And it was on the fast side. I think that basically showcases just how strong Bello can be and how out of hand it gets. What I like about the deck so much is that you can run a ton of board wipes and you're really not that hindered by it. Either they're indestructible or they're not creatures, so you're not losing them. And Bello is cheap enough that you can keep casting him over and over again, and typically you're running a lot of actually pretty expensive mana rocks that tap for more than just one, so it's pretty sweet. I think the deck is a lot of fun. I want to tweak it a lot more and do some more cool stuff with it, but I'm just having a real blast with this. Zoraline, if you've seen the previous game with it, I mean, Eric just struggled on lands. I think a lot of my opponents actually did it in this game in particular, but Zoraline has a really low curve, so it wasn't that difficult for Eric to get a bit of a board. I think the Valley Rock color, if left alone, would have probably sealed the game for him, so that's pretty much why I took him out first. Finneas, again, I think it's a cool concept. I like the idea of focusing on grab-it cards. It just, I think it wants to go wider than Kuzno was able to get. And a lot of the token generation he just didn't draw. Like, he had Doubling Season in his hand, which is fantastic, but he didn't cast it because it's just too much mana and it wasn't going to help him with the board that he had, which is a bit unfortunate. Tamiyo, I mean, Desmond kept an opener. I'm not too sure what to think of that. He had a lot of action. It was really cheap too. All he needed was one land, but that is so risky. Having to draw into your second land source, otherwise you're just out of it for like several turns, as we saw, was brutal. I think if he'd gotten that command tower like 2 turns earlier, this game would have ended very differently. I think with him getting that Omniscience out and then basically just dumping his hand for value, yeah, I mean, like, you either win with Omniscience or you're so far behind that it doesn't help you, and in this case it was the former, not the latter. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, but it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.